What if I told you that one managed to finesse some of rap's biggest stars out of over $1 billion in potential earnings? What if I told you this same man built his empire on the backs of artists who trusted him only to snake them when the money got too big? And what if I told you that this man's rise to power started with him literally snitching on someone and getting them locked up for 20 years? Meet Pierre P. Thomas, the CEO of Quality Control Music. On the surface, he looks like a successful businessman who helped launch the careers of Lil Baby, Migos, and other Atlanta superstars. But when you dig deeper into the paperwork, the phone calls, and the business deals, a completely different picture emerges. This is the story of how one manipulated the system, betrayed his artists' trust, and walked away with hundreds of millions while leaving the people who made him rich with nothing. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how pulled off one of the biggest finesse jobs in hip-hop history. And trust me, the details are going to blow your mind. So, make sure you stick around until the end because what I'm about to show you will change how you look at the music industry forever. Before we get into how P finessed his way to the top, we need to understand where this whole story started. Pierre Thomas wasn't always the suit-wearing CEO you see today. Back in the day, P was deep in Atlanta streets, and according to court documents that surfaced in 2023, his transition from the streets to the boardroom involved some seriously questionable moves. See, P's entry into the music business wasn't some inspiring rags to riches story. It was calculated, and it started with betrayal. On December 8, 2009, P was at an apartment complex that was basically a marijuana trap house playing Xbox and betting on basketball games. The apartment belonged to his friend Karan Dennis, and it was about to become the scene of a murder that would change P's life forever. According to court documents, a man named Kian, who went by the street name Stunner or showed up looking to buy marijuana when Karen went to get the product Stunner opened fire, shooting Karan multiple times before turning the gun on PP managed to escape through a sliding glass door. But Karan died from his injuries. This wasn't just a random robbery. This was personal. Now, here's where the story gets really wild. Instead of handling this situation the way most street dudes would, he decided to cooperate with law enforcement. And I'm not talking about just giving a statement. I'm talking about becoming a full-blown confidential informant. The court documents show that P provided police with detailed descriptions of the shooter, helped them identify Stunner through photo lineups, and continued feeding them information for months. He told investigators that Stunner was approximately 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, with a mohawk and possible face tattoos. But when they first showed him photos, P couldn't make an identification. Here's where it gets really calculated. P kept in contact with investigators, telling them what he was hearing on the streets about who might have been responsible. He provided information that helped police identify Stunner as someone who used the nickname and had previously been a shooting victim. 5 months after the initial shooting, P was finally able to positively identify Stunner in a photo lineup. But P wasn't done. On May 27, 2010, P was at Lenox Mall when he spotted Stunner. Instead of avoiding confrontation, P approached him and started asking if he knew who he was. According to P's written statement to police, he confronted Stunner about the murder, which led to Stunner pulling out a black handgun and chasing P into the mall while threatening to kill him. P immediately called the police and told them exactly where to find Stunner. Within minutes, officers had pulled over Stunner's vehicle and arrested him. The crazy part is that no weapon was found in the car, but Stunner was still charged with aggravated assault based solely on P's statement. The paperwork is crystal clear, fam. P was the only civilian witness listed in the case. His statement was the main evidence that got Stunner convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison. This wasn't some street justice or self-defense situation. This was straight-up cooperation with law enforcement to eliminate someone P saw as a threat. Stunner tried to fight back from prison, writing letters to the judge claiming that P had made false accusations because P was afraid Stunner would retaliate for P shooting him first. But it was too late. The damage was done and Stunner was locked up for 2 decades. But here's the crazy part. P used this situation as his origin story for getting into music. He's been quoted saying he wanted to get into the music business as a way to get out of the streets and see his kids grow up. What he doesn't mention is that his way out involved putting another man behind bars for 2 decades. The timeline is what makes this whole thing suspicious. The Stunner situation happened in 2009 and 2010. Quality Control Music was founded in 2013. That's a pretty quick turnaround from street life to having enough capital to start signing major artists. The question becomes, where did that initial money really come from? P claims he was already a millionaire before getting into music, but when you look at the facts, that timeline doesn't quite add up. How does someone go from being involved in street-level transactions to having millions to invest in a record label in just 3 years? Either P was sitting on way more money than anyone knew, or there are parts of this story that haven't been told. What we do know is that P was incredibly strategic about how he entered the music business. He wasn't trying to be the flashy label head throwing money around at industry parties. Instead, he was methodical. He studied the Atlanta music scene, identified the gaps in the market, and positioned himself to fill those gaps. P understood something that a lot of other label executives missed. Atlanta's street culture and its music culture were completely intertwined. You couldn't succeed in one without understanding the other. His street background, as problematic as it was, gave him credibility with artists who were coming from similar situations. But P also understood that the street credibility alone wasn't enough. He needed to learn the business side of music, and he needed to do it fast. According to people who knew him during this period, P was constantly studying contracts, learning about publishing, and figuring out how the major label system worked. The genius of P's approach was that he didn't try to compete with major labels on their terms. Instead, he created a different model, one that combined street credibility with business sophistication. He could talk to artists in their language, but he could also structure deals that protected his interests. This is where P.'s background in the streets actually helped him in an unexpected way. Street life teaches you to be paranoid, to always think about how people might try to take advantage of you, and to structure situations so that you maintain control. Those same skills translated perfectly to the music business. P also understood that loyalty was a currency in both the streets and the music industry. If he could get artists to see him as family rather than just a business partner, they would be less likely to question his decisions or look too closely at the contracts they were signing. So, how does someone go from being a street dude to having enough money to start signing major artists? That's where P's story gets really interesting because the timeline doesn't quite add up the way he wants you to think it does. When P and Coach K founded Quality Control Music in 2013, they weren't starting from scratch. They had been watching the Atlanta music scene for years, studying which artists were building real fan bases and which ones were just making noise. Their first major signing was the Migos, but that wasn't a random choice. It was a calculated business decision. The Migos had already released several mixtapes and were generating serious buzz in Atlanta's underground scene. They had the street credibility, the musical talent, and the work ethic that P.E. was looking for. But most importantly, they didn't have the industry connections or business knowledge to negotiate a fair deal. P's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. He identified young, hungry artists who were already making noise, but didn't have access to the industry infrastructure they needed to take their careers to the next level. He offered them something they couldn't get anywhere else, a real partnership with someone who understood their world. But here's where P's business model gets really clever and really shady. He wasn't just signing artists to traditional record deals. He was creating 360-degree partnerships that gave QC control over every aspect of the artists' careers. Recording, publishing, merchandising, touring, and even social media presence. The genius of this approach was that P didn't need massive upfront investments to get started. He was essentially betting on artists who were already building their own buzz. QC would provide the industry connections and business infrastructure, but the artists were still doing most of the work to build their brands and fan bases. According to the lawsuit documents that came out when the Migos sued QC, P was structuring deals that gave him maximum control and maximum profit while giving artists minimum ownership of their own success. The contracts were designed to last forever with automatic renewals tied to QC's distribution deals. Think about how insidious that is. As long as QC had a distributor, whether that was Capitol, Atlantic, Warner, or Sony, the artist's contracts would just keep renewing automatically. The artist could never actually leave QC unless QC lost all of its distribution deals, which was never going to happen. The Migos' lawsuit revealed some wild details about how these contracts worked in practice. They claimed their publishing percentages were way below industry standard, and that QC was taking the majority of revenue that should have been going to the artists. We're talking about a group that had multiple platinum albums and billions of streams, but they were getting paid like they were still underground artists. But the most damaging allegation was that the lawyer who negotiated their contracts also worked for QC. Think about that for a second. The person who was supposed to be protecting the Migos' interests was actually working for the other side. That's like having your divorce lawyer also represent your spouse. It's a complete conflict of interest. And it explains how P was able to get artists to sign such unfavorable deals. This is where you start to see P's real strategy. He wasn't just signing artists. He was creating a system where he controlled every aspect of their business. The artists thought they were getting a fair deal, but the contracts were structured to benefit QC at every level. But if you really want to understand how P operates, you need to look at his relationship with Lil Baby. Because Baby's story shows you exactly how P builds up an artist, gains their trust, and then positions himself to cash out when the money gets big. When P first signed Lil Baby in 2017, Baby was nobody in the music industry. He was fresh out of prison trying to make something happen with his music, but he didn't have the connections or the resources to break through. Baby had been locked up for 2 years on charges. And when he got out, the Atlanta music scene had completely changed. P saw something in Baby that other people missed. It wasn't just the musical talent. It was the hunger, the work ethic, and the street credibility that Baby brought to the table. But most importantly, Baby was in a vulnerable position where he needed QC more than QC needed him. According to P himself, the early days of Baby's career were rough. P used to send Baby out on promo runs where there would be 3 people in the crowd. Baby would call him back complaining about making no money, about the small crowds, about how hard the grind was. But P kept telling him the same thing. Don't think about money right now. Just think about putting yourself in front of a crowd of people. Your breakthrough comes from your sacrifice. That sounds inspirational, right? Like a mentor helping a young artist develop his craft. But when you understand P's business model, you realize what was really happening. P was investing minimal money in Baby's development while Baby was doing all the work to build his brand and his fan base. The sacrifice P was talking about wasn't just about Baby giving up fast money from the streets. It was about Baby building an empire that P would ultimately control. Every show Baby did, every fan he gained, every song he recorded was increasing the value of QC's investment. But Baby didn't own any of that value. QC did. P was essentially getting Baby to create his own value while QC maintained ownership of that value. Baby was grinding, performing for small crowds, building his fan base one person at a time. But all of that work was increasing QC's assets, not Baby's net worth. And this strategy worked perfectly. Baby went from doing shows for 3 people to becoming one of the biggest rappers in the world. His streaming numbers exploded. His albums went platinum. And he became the face of Atlanta's new generation of hip-hop. Songs like Drip Too Hard and Life Goes On turned Baby into a household name. But here's the thing. The more successful Baby became, the more valuable QC became, not Baby himself. This is where P's genius really shows. He didn't just sign Baby to a record deal. He created a situation where Baby's success was completely tied to QC's success. Baby couldn't leave without giving up everything he had built. He couldn't renegotiate without P's approval. He was trapped in a system that P had designed to benefit QC first and the artist second. But Baby didn't see it that way. He saw P as the person who had believed in him when nobody else would. The relationship between P and Baby was built on more than just business. Positioned himself as a father figure, a mentor, someone who genuinely cared about Baby's success. He was at Baby's shows. He was promoting Baby's music on social media, and he was constantly talking about how proud he was of Baby's growth. But that emotional connection was also a business strategy. The closer Baby felt to P personally, the less likely he was to question the business arrangements or look too closely at the contracts he had signed. P was using Baby's loyalty and gratitude as tools to maintain control over his career. What made P's strategy even more effective was the timing. QC was founded right as the music industry was transitioning from physical sales and downloads to streaming. This shift completely changed how artists could build careers and how labels could generate revenue. In the old model, labels needed significant upfront investment to manufacture CDs, get radio play, and secure retail distribution. But in the streaming era, an artist could build a massive fan base with just a laptop and an internet connection. This leveled the playing field in some ways, but it also created new opportunities for exploitation. P understood the streaming game better than most executives. He realized that streaming success wasn't just about having good music. It was about understanding algorithms, playlist placement, and fan engagement. QC invested heavily in digital marketing and streaming optimization, which gave their artists a huge advantage. But here's where it gets interesting. In the Young Thug phone calls that were leaked during his legal troubles, we hear P talking about buying streams for his artists. He's literally bragging about spending $50,000 to buy streams for Gunna's album to help it beat The Weeknd on the charts. P says in the call, like, you never earned a #1 album. I spent 50 extra grand buying streams for you to beat me, and Cash know the same plug, so Cash could have did the same thing, but Cash like let it go. This reveals something crucial about how P operates. He's not just relying on organic success. He's actively manipulating the metrics that determine chart positions and industry recognition. And he's doing it in a way that makes the artists feel like they owe him for their success. Think about the psychology of that. Gunna thinks he earned a #1 album through his talent and hard work, but P is telling someone else that he bought that success for Gunna. So, Gunna feels grateful to P for believing in him, while P knows that he literally purchased Gun's chart position. This is manipulation at its finest. P is creating artificial success, then using that success to justify his control over the artist's career. The artist thinks they're successful because of their talent and P's guidance. But PE knows he's been pulling strings behind the scenes. The streaming era also made it easier for PE to hide how much money QC was really making from each artist. In the old model, you could look at album sales and get a rough idea of how much revenue an artist was generating. But streaming revenue is much more complex, with different rates for different platforms, different deals for different territories, and complex formulas for calculating payouts. This complexity gave PC cover to structure deals that heavily favored QC while making it difficult for artists to understand exactly how much money they were leaving on the table. The artists knew they were successful, but they didn't necessarily know how successful they should be financially. P also used the streaming era to expand QC's reach beyond just Atlanta. Streaming platforms are global, which meant that QC's artists could build international fan bases without the traditional infrastructure of international record labels. But again, QC controlled those relationships and captured most of the value from international success. But the Scooter Braun situation isn't the only time we've seen P snake his artists. The Young Thug phone calls revealed a whole pattern of behavior that shows how P really operates behind the scenes. These calls were recorded while Thug was in jail, and they provide an unfiltered look at how industry insiders really talk about business when they think nobody is listening. In one of the most damaging calls, Young Thug is talking to Baby about P, and Thug is basically trying to open Baby's eyes to what's really happening. Thug tells Baby, "You can't do that, man. That's a fact, bro. You wrong about that anyway. A rat is a rat, bro. I understand all that. A dude helped put you on. Listen, man. A dude is a rat. I don't care what the hell that dude gave. That dude gave me $1 million, man. You a rat." Now, Thug is referring to the Stunner situation we talked about earlier. But what's interesting is how he's trying to explain to Baby that PE's character issues go deeper than just business. Thug is saying that someone who would cooperate with police to eliminate a threat is the same type of person who would betray his business partners when the money gets big enough. But Thug doesn't stop there. He starts breaking down the business side of things. And this is where it gets really revealing. Thug tells Baby, "You know what I'm saying? The people only getting behind your label because of you. They not buying your label because of Migos. Those dudes in the red. Those dudes ain't making no money. Watch out. Those dudes in the red." What Thug is saying is that QC's value is almost entirely based on Baby's success. Amigos aren't generating the same revenue they used to, and the other artists on the label aren't moving the needle financially. Baby is carrying the entire label, but he's not getting compensated like the star that he is. This is a crucial insight into how QC's business model works. P has structured the label so that one or two major artists subsidize the entire operation. Baby's success is paying for everyone else's careers, but Baby doesn't have any ownership stake that reflects his actual contribution to QC's value. Thug goes even further, saying, "One or two of them done bought their stuff back from your ass anyway, then gave you 15, 20 million of their little hard-earned money, bought that stuff back, so you them sure got all them anyway. This suggests that some QC artists have actually paid to get out of their contracts, which means P was making money both from their success and from their desire to leave. That's a wild business model. Profit from artists when they're successful, then profit again when they want to escape. Think about how twisted that is. P signs artists to contracts that heavily favor QC. When the artists become successful, P profits from their success. When the artists realize they're being exploited and want to leave, P makes them pay millions to get out. It's like charging someone rent to live in a house, then charging them again to move out. But the most revealing part of these calls is when Thug talks about how PE operates with other labels and business partners. Thug is trying to explain to Baby that PE's loyalty only goes one way. He expects loyalty from his artists, but he doesn't reciprocate when it conflicts with his financial interests. The crazy part is that Baby doesn't really respond to any of this. He's not agreeing with Thug, but he's not defending P either. It's like he's starting to realize that maybe the partnership he thought he had with P wasn't as solid as he believed. You can almost hear the wheels turning in Baby's head as Thug breaks down the reality of his situation. Now, this is where the story gets really wild because we actually have audio of P talking about how he finessed Baby out of what could have been the biggest payday of his career. And the crazy part is P is bragging about it like it's some kind of business masterclass. In leaked phone calls that surfaced during Young Thug's legal situation, we hear P talking about how Scooter Braun approached Baby with a deal. Now, Scooter Braun is a major player in the music industry. He's managed Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, and other massive stars. When Scooter wants to do business with you, that's a big deal. According to P.E.'s own words in these phone calls, Scooter offered Baby $150 million for his catalog. Let me repeat that. $150 million directly to Baby for his music rights. That's generational wealth type money. That's set your family up forever type money. That's more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. But here's what happened, and this is where you see P.E.'s manipulation in full effect. When Scooter approached Baby about the deal, Baby told him he couldn't do anything without P being involved. Baby was being loyal to his label and his business partner. He said, "I don't really do business without P. That's my big homie, bro. I ain't never doing nothing without him." This shows you Baby's character. Even when someone was offering him life-changing money, his first thought was to make sure his business partner was included. Baby wasn't trying to go behind P's back or cut him out of the deal. He was trying to do right by QC and make sure everyone got paid. Scooter told Baby he didn't need to bring P to the meeting, but Baby insisted he was trying to honor his relationship with QC and maintain the loyalty that he thought was mutual. That loyalty was about to cost him everything. Because while Baby was being loyal and refusing to take meetings without P was having his own conversations with Scooter. And according to P's own words in the phone calls, Scooter went around Baby completely and made a deal directly with P to buy QC for $300 million. In the phone call, P explains exactly how this went down. Scooter Run told Wham, "I want to buy your rights, so I'm going to give you $150 million. Wham tell this dude, "No, I'm cool. I got to bring Pete to the meeting." Man, that dude went straight around Wham and called Pete and bought the whole label from Pete. Think about what just happened there. Baby turned down $150 million because he wanted to be loyal to P and QC. But P took a $300 million deal for the entire label without even consulting Baby. Baby's loyalty cost him $150 million, while P's betrayal made him $300 million. But it gets worse. According to the phone calls, Scooter didn't even want the whole label. He specifically wanted Baby's catalog. The $300 million deal was essentially Scooter paying for Baby's music, but the money went to P instead of Baby. In the phone calls, you can hear P talking about this like it's some kind of chess move. He's explaining to someone how Scooter tried to buy Baby directly, but when Baby refused without P being there, P just sold the whole label anyway. He's literally bragging about how he outmaneuvered his own artist. P says in the call, "P go take the meeting without playing and get the business done. Of course, I need to get the business done for $3,400 million for sure. But goddamn, bro." The casual way P talks about this is what makes it so damaging. He's not conflicted about betraying Baby's trust. He's not worried about the ethics of the situation. He's just focused on getting the biggest payday possible, regardless of how it affects the artist who created most of the value. And here's the most messed up part. Baby didn't get anything from that $300 million deal. The money went to P and Coach K as the owners of QC. Baby, the artist whose catalog was the main reason for the purchase, got nothing. His loyalty was rewarded with betrayal. The fallout from the Scooter Bra deal and the leaked phone calls was immediate and dramatic. Within days of the calls becoming public, Lil Baby and QCP unfollowed each other on Instagram. For an industry that communicates through social media gestures, this was equivalent to a public declaration of war. But the social media unfollowing was just the tip of the iceberg. According to industry insiders, Baby's team immediately started exploring legal options to get out of his QC contract. The problem was that P had structured these deals to make it extremely expensive and difficult for artists to leave. P's response to the public backlash was telling. Instead of trying to explain his side of the story or justify his actions, he went on the attack. In a series of social media posts, P basically said that he didn't care what people thought about his business practices. In one deleted tweet, P wrote, "Imagine some broke-ass rats like Thugger and these rats go trying to run a rat narrative on me and all my people that I love running with these host people knowing how these people talk about me. I'm going to say this for the last time. I'm not no street dude. I'm a tax-paying citizen that's running a business and taking care of my family." This response reveals a lot about P's mindset. He's not denying the allegations about how he treated Baby. Instead, he's attacking the credibility of the people making the allegations. He's also trying to distance himself from his street past, even though that same past was what gave him credibility with artists in the first place. P continued, "All the street dudes is broke, dead, and in jail. So why do y'all continue to glorify this stuff? Streets been dead. Y'all people gave the city a bad name. And by the way, I ain't never been in no courtroom on no stuff. Sat in an interrogation room running people names." But this is where P's response becomes problematic because we have the court documents that show he absolutely did sit in interrogation rooms and provide information to police. He's literally lying about his past while attacking other people's credibility. The industry response was mixed. Some executives privately supported P, arguing that he was just doing business and that artists need to read their contracts more carefully. But others were disturbed by the level of manipulation and betrayal revealed in the phone calls. Several prominent artists spoke out about the situation, with many expressing support for Baby and criticism of P's tactics. The conversation quickly expanded beyond just the QC situation to broader issues about how the music industry treats artists. Social media played a huge role in amplifying the story. Hip-hop fans and industry watchers dissected every detail of the phone calls, creating viral threads that explained the business implications of P's actions. The story became a case study in how not to treat your artists. But P also had defenders. Some people argued that he was just a smart businessman who had outmaneuvered his competition. They pointed to QC's success and argued that P had created value for everyone involved, even if the distribution of that value wasn't equal. The debate revealed a fundamental divide in how people think about the music industry. Some see it as a business where everyone is trying to maximize their own profits and manipulation is just part of the game. Others believe that there should be ethical standards that govern how industry executives treat the artists who create the value. If you want more evidence of how P operates, just look at what happened with Offset. Because Offset's lawsuit against QC shows you exactly what happens when an artist tries to break free from P's system and how P responds when his control is challenged. The Offset situation started in January 2021 when Offset paid millions of dollars to QC to get back the rights to his solo music. According to the lawsuit, the deal was clear and straightforward. When Offset makes music as a solo artist, QC doesn't get a cut. Offset literally bought his freedom, and for a while everything seemed to be working fine. But then Offset dropped his hit song 54321 and suddenly QC wanted a piece of the profits. Even though Offset had paid to get his solo rights back, P was trying to claim ownership of Offset's new music. That's not just greedy. That's straight-up contract violation. The lawsuit reveals some wild details about how P tried to maintain control over Offset even after he had paid to get out. According to Offset's legal team, P had been actively blackballing Offset for 2 years, trying to prevent him from getting features, radio play, and other industry support. Offset wasn't having it. He filed a lawsuit accusing QC and P of violating their deal and trying to sabotage his solo career. In a series of social media posts, Offset laid out his side of the story. "They act like I'm the problem. I paid millions to get my rights back. You blackmailed me and said I ain't at one time homie. I ain't spoke to you in 2 years. Now I drop and you want my name on my credit." This reveals the petty and vindictive side of P's personality. It wasn't enough for him to take Offset's money and let him go. He also wanted to punish Offset for having the audacity to leave QC. The blackballing allegations suggest that P was using his industry connections to sabotage Offset's career out of spite. Cardi B, Offset's wife, also weighed in on the situation with her own social media posts. Offset brought himself out of his QC deal after they didn't want to renegotiate his contract. "I'm tired of people trying to make Offset look like the bad guy. Enough is enough." What Cardi is revealing is that Offset didn't just randomly decide to leave QC. He tried to renegotiate his deal to get better terms, but QC refused. So, Offset paid to get out, but QC is still trying to control his career. That's the definition of having your cake and eating it, too. Take the buyout money, but still claim ownership of the artist's future work. But here's where it gets really petty. When Offset's lawsuit became public, P responded on social media with a deleted tweet that said, "The last lawsuit was filed publicly and dismissed quietly. Let's see how this one go. Been too real for all this late. Everyone know the real problem." That tweet is telling because it shows P's mindset. He's not denying Offset's allegations. He's just saying that he's dealt with lawsuits before and he's confident he'll win this one, too. It's like he expects artists to sue him. It's just part of doing business. The real problem P is referring to is probably the fact that Offset wanted independence from QC. In P's world, artists who try to leave or renegotiate their deals are the problem, not the contracts that trap them in the first place. But the most revealing part of P's response was a video he made with Lil Baby where they both said the show must go on. The video was clearly meant to show that P still had Baby support, but it actually revealed how P uses his relationship with successful artists to intimidate the ones who are trying to leave. The message was clear. If you try to fight QC, we'll use our other artists to show that you're the problem, not us. It's a classic manipulation tactic. Isolate the person who's speaking out by showing that everyone else is still loyal. But if you really want to see how ruthless P can be, you need to look at what happened with Amigos, because these were the artists who put QC on the map, who generated hundreds of millions in revenue for the label, and P still found a way to finesse them out of their fair share. The Migos lawsuit against QC filed in 2019 revealed some absolutely wild details about how their contracts were structured. According to the lawsuit, their contracts were designed to last forever with automatic renewals tied to QC's distribution deals. As long as QC had a distributor, the Migos contracts would automatically renew. That means they could never actually leave QC unless QC lost all of its distribution deals. Think about how insidious that contract structure is. The Migos thought they were signing a record deal with specific terms and a specific duration, but in reality, they were signing themselves into permanent servitude. As long as QC remained a functioning label, the Migos would be trapped. But it gets worse. The lawsuit alleged that their publishing percentages were way below industry standard, and that QC was taking the majority of revenue that should have been going to the artists. We're talking about a group that had multiple platinum albums, billions of streams, and sold-out world tours, but they were getting paid like they were still underground artists. The numbers are staggering when you think about it. Songs like Bad and Bougie, Stir Fry, and Walk It Talk It generated massive revenue across multiple platforms: streaming, radio, sync licensing, merchandise, and touring. But according to the lawsuit, the Migos were only seeing a small fraction of that money. The most damaging allegation was that the lawyer who negotiated their contracts also worked for QC. This is where you see the full scope of P's manipulation. The Migos thought they had independent legal representation protecting their interests, but their lawyer was actually working for the other side. Imagine going into a negotiation thinking you have an advocate, only to find out later that your advocate was secretly working for your opponent. That's not just unethical, it's potentially illegal. It explains how P was able to get the Migos to sign such unfavorable deals. They didn't have anyone actually looking out for their interests. In the Young Thug phone calls, Thug actually confirms some of these allegations. he tells Baby, "Those dudes in the red, those dudes ain't making no money." He's saying that despite all their success, the Migos aren't actually profitable because of how their deals are structured. Thug goes even further, saying that some of the Migos members done bought their stuff back from QC, meaning they paid millions to get out of their contracts. So P was making money from their success, then making more money when they wanted to leave. This reveals the full scope of P's business model. He signs artists to exploitative contracts, profits from their success, refuses to renegotiate when they become valuable, and then charges them millions to escape. It's a system designed to extract maximum value from artists at every stage of their careers. When the Migos lawsuit became public, P responded with a long statement that basically said he was disappointed that artists he had helped were now alleging unfair business practices. He talked about building QC on family values and how hard it was to deal with pride and ego in the music business. But the most revealing part of P's statement was when he said, "I was a millionaire before I got into the music business." He's trying to position himself as someone who didn't need the artist's money, but that doesn't explain why he structured deals that were so heavily in QC's favor. P also said, "I'm not forcing anybody to be in business with us that has a problem and cannot communicate and does not want to work as a unit. Everything is negotiable." But if everything was negotiable, why were the Migos forced to file a lawsuit? Why couldn't they just renegotiate their deals? The answer is simple. P's version of negotiation probably meant the artist could leave if they paid enough money to QC. It's not really negotiation when one side holds all the power and the other side has to pay millions just to get to the bargaining table. When you step back and look at all these situations together, a clear pattern emerges. P has a specific playbook for how he deals with artists, and it's designed to maximize QC's profits while minimizing the artist's control over their own careers. First, he identifies talented artists who are hungry and don't have other options. He targets people who are coming from difficult circumstances, prison, poverty, street life, because they're more likely to be grateful for any opportunity and less likely to question the terms. Second, he offers them deals that seem generous compared to their current situation, but the contracts are structured to give QC maximum control and maximum profit sharing. The artists see the immediate benefits: studio time, promotion, industry connections, but they don't understand the long-term implications of what they're signing. Third, he builds personal relationships with the artists based on loyalty and trust. He positions himself as a mentor, a father figure, a big brother who has their best interests at heart. This emotional connection makes it harder for artists to question the business arrangements or seek independent advice. Fourth, he uses conflicts of interest to maintain control. The same lawyers represent both QC and the artists. The same managers work for both sides. The same accountants handle everyone's books. This creates a system where the artists think they have independent representation, but everyone is actually working for P5. When the artists become successful and start generating serious money, P uses their success to increase QC's value without proportionally increasing the artist compensation. The artists are doing the work, building the fan bases, creating the music, but QC is capturing most of the value. Sixth, when artists try to renegotiate or leave, P makes it as expensive and difficult as possible. He uses the contract's automatic renewal clauses, the conflicts of interest with representation, and other legal mechanisms to maintain control. Artists who want to leave have to pay millions. And even then, P tries to maintain some level of ongoing control. Finally, when artists do manage to break free, PE tries to sabotage their careers through blackballing and industry manipulation. He uses his relationships with other labels, radio stations, and industry players to make it difficult for former QC artists to succeed independently. This isn't just bad business. It's a systematic approach to extracting maximum value from artists while giving them minimum control over their own careers. And the crazy part is that P has been doing this for years. And most people in the industry just accept it as normal business practice. The Young Thug phone calls were so damaging because they showed P.E.'s mindset in his own words. He wasn't trying to hide his tactics or justify them. He was bragging about how he outmaneuvered his own artists. That level of arrogance suggests that he doesn't see anything wrong with his approach. But the artists are starting to fight back. The Migos lawsuit, the Offset lawsuit, and the public revelations from the Young Thug calls are all putting pressure on P to change how he operates. The question is whether he'll adapt his business model or just find new ways to maintain control. The streaming era has given artists more options than they had in the past. They can build fan bases independently, generate revenue without traditional label support, and communicate directly with fans through social media. This should give them more leverage in negotiations with labels. But P has adapted to these changes, too. The Scooter Braun deal shows that he's thinking globally, not just about the Atlanta market. By selling QC to a major international company, he's positioned himself to benefit from the global growth of hip-hop and R&B. The billion-dollar calculation, 46, 30 to 50. When you add up all the money that P has extracted from his artists over the years, the numbers are staggering. The Scooter Braun deal alone was worth $300 million, and that was primarily based on the value of catalogs created by QC's artists. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Let's break down the real numbers. The Migos during their peak years from 2016 to 2020 generated billions of streams across all platforms. Bad and Bougie alone has over 1.5 billion streams on Spotify. Stir Fry has over 800 million. Wakiatet has over 600 million. When you add up all their hits, you're looking at over 10 billion streams just from their biggest songs. At an average payout of 3 cents per stream, that's $30 million in streaming revenue just from their biggest hit. But that doesn't include album sales, touring revenue, merchandise, sync licensing, or international royalties. When you factor in all revenue streams, the Migos probably generated over $200 million in total revenue during their QC years. Now, let's look at Lil Baby. Baby has become one of the biggest rappers in the world with multiple platinum albums and massive streaming numbers. His album Harder Than Ever went platinum. Street Gossip went platinum. My Turn went triple platinum and was the best-selling album of 2020. Baby's streaming numbers are even more impressive than the Migos. He's generated over 15 billion streams across all platforms. Using the same calculation, Baby has generated at least $45 million in streaming revenue alone. But again, that doesn't include touring, merchandise, endorsements, or other revenue streams. Baby's total revenue generation for QC is probably in the $300 to $400 million range. Then you have the other QC artists, Lil Yachty, City Girls, Offset solo work, and various other signings. When you add up all the revenue generated by QC artists over the years, you're looking at well over $1 billion in total value creation. But here's the key question. How much of that $1 billion actually went to the artists who created it? Based on the lawsuits and the leaked phone calls, it seems like the artists saw a very small percentage of the value they created. The Offset situation alone shows how this works. Offset paid millions to get his solo rights back, but P still tried to claim ownership of his new music. That's money coming and going. P gets paid when the artist wants to leave, but he still wants to profit from their future success. The Migos lawsuit suggested that they were in the red despite their massive success. If that's true, it means that QC was structured in a way that the artist owed money to the label even after generating hundreds of millions in revenue. That's not just unfair, it's financially impossible unless the contracts were designed to benefit the label at every level. Lil Baby's situation might be the most egregious. He turned down $150 million because he wanted to be loyal to P and QC, but P took a $300 million deal without consulting Baby, and Baby got nothing from it. That's a $150 million cost for loyalty and a $300 million reward for betrayal. When you add up all these situations, the Migos lost revenue, Offsets, buyout payments, Baby's missed opportunities, and the other QC artists who have had similar experiences, you're looking at well over $1 billion in value that was extracted from artists and transferred to P and QC. That's not just a business success story. It's one of the biggest wealth transfers from artists to executives in hip-hop history. And the crazy part is that P has been celebrated as a successful businessman, while the artists who created that wealth have been portrayed as complainers or disloyal partners. The P and QC situation isn't just about one label or one executive. It's a perfect example of how the music industry has evolved to extract maximum value from artists while giving them minimum control over their own careers. The traditional record label model was always exploitative, but at least it was somewhat transparent. Labels would give artists advances, pay for recording and promotion, and then recoup those costs from album sales. Artists knew they were giving up ownership in exchange for industry support. But the modern model is much more sophisticated and much more manipulative. Labels now control not just recording and distribution, but also publishing, merchandising, touring, and even social media presence. They've created 360 degrees deals that give them a piece of everything an artist does. The streaming era has made this even worse. Artists need massive streaming numbers to generate significant revenue, but they don't control the platforms or the algorithms that determine who gets heard. Labels have the relationships and the resources to manipulate streaming numbers. But artists are dependent on those same labels for access. P's genius was recognizing that he could use personal relationships and emotional manipulation to get artists to accept deals that were even more favorable to the label than traditional contracts. By positioning himself as a mentor and a family member, he got artists to trust him with decisions that were ultimately against their own interests. The Young Thug calls were so revealing because they showed how this manipulation works in practice. Thug was trying to explain to Baby that P's personal loyalty was separate from his business interests. Just because P acted like family didn't mean he would treat Baby fairly when big money was involved. But this isn't just a P problem. It's an industry problem. The same tactics are being used by labels and executives across the music business. Artists are being manipulated into accepting deals that prioritize label profits over artist welfare, and the industry structure makes it almost impossible for artists to escape once they're trapped. The major labels have also adopted many of PE's tactics. They're using 360-degree deals, conflicts of interest with representation, and emotional manipulation to maintain control over artists. The only difference is that they have more resources and more sophisticated legal teams to enforce their control. The streaming platforms are complicit in this system too. They have the data and the algorithms that determine which artists succeed, but they share that information primarily with labels, not with independent artists. This creates a system where artists are dependent on labels for access to the very platforms where their music is consumed. The solution isn't just better contracts or more artist-friendly laws. It's a fundamental shift in how the industry thinks about the relationship between artists and the business infrastructure that supports them. Artists create the value, but they don't control how that value is distributed. Until that changes, we're going to keep seeing situations like the QC Finesse. So, where do things stand now? P is still the CEO of QC, which is now owned by HIB America as part of the $300 million deal with Scooter Braun. He's positioned himself as a successful businessman who built a major label from the ground up, and he's largely avoided serious consequences for his treatment of artists. The Hive deal is particularly interesting because it shows how P has managed to monetize his exploitation of artists on a global scale. HIB is a South Korean entertainment company that's looking to expand into the American market. They saw QC as a valuable acquisition, but that value was built on the backs of artists who didn't get fair compensation for their contributions. Lil Baby is still signed to QC, but his relationship with P has clearly changed. The fact that they unfollowed each other on social media after the Young Thug calls became public suggests that Baby is finally understanding what Thug was trying to tell him. But Baby is still contractually tied to QC, so his options are limited. Industry insiders suggest that Baby's team is exploring legal options to get out of his QC deal, but the contracts are structured to make that extremely expensive. Baby might have to pay tens of millions of dollars to buy his freedom, which would be ironic given that he turned down $150 million to stay loyal to QC. The Migos have largely moved on from QC, but it's unclear how much they had to pay to get out of their contracts or what ongoing obligations they might have. The fact that they were able to leave suggests that they either paid significant money or that QC decided it wasn't worth fighting to keep them. Offset is still fighting his lawsuit against QC, and that case could set important precedents for how these types of contract disputes are resolved. If Offset wins, it could encourage other artists to challenge exploitative contracts. If P wins, it could embolden other labels to use similar tactics. The industry as a whole is starting to pay more attention to these issues. The Young Thug calls generated massive discussion on social media and in hip-hop media about label practices and artist rights. That public pressure could lead to changes in how labels structure deals and treat artists. But P has also shown that he's adaptable. The Hive deal positions QC as part of a global entertainment company, which gives P access to international markets and new revenue streams. He's not just thinking about Atlanta hip-hop anymore. He's thinking about global music business. Several other QC artists have also left the label in recent years, suggesting that the pattern of exploitation has continued even after the public revelations. Each departure probably involves significant financial payments to QC, which means P continues to profit from artists even after they leave. The long-term impact of the QC situation extends far beyond just the artists who were directly affected. It's changed how the industry thinks about artist-label relationships and exposed tactics that were previously hidden from public view. For artists, the QC situation has been a wake-up call about the importance of independent legal representation and careful contract review. The revelation that QC artists' lawyers were also working for the label has made other artists more cautious about potential conflicts of interest. The situation has also highlighted the importance of understanding the streaming economy and how revenue is generated and distributed. Many artists sign deals without fully understanding how their music will make money in the digital age, which leaves them vulnerable to exploitation. For labels, the QC situation has shown both the potential rewards and the potential risks of PE's approach. While QC generated massive profits, the public backlash and legal challenges have also created significant costs and reputational damage. The industry has also started to see more artist-friendly alternatives emerge. Independent distribution platforms, artist services companies, and new financing models are giving artists more options than they had in the past. This increased competition should theoretically lead to better deals for artists, but the fundamental power imbalances in the industry remain. Labels still control most of the infrastructure that artists need to succeed, and they still have more resources and more sophisticated legal teams than most artists can afford. The QC situation has also influenced how hip-hop media covers the business side of the industry. There's more scrutiny of label practices, more investigation into contract terms, and more willingness to call out exploitative behavior. Social media has played a crucial role in this shift. Artists can now share their experiences directly with fans, bypassing traditional media channels that might be influenced by label advertising dollars. This has made it harder for labels to control the narrative around their business practices. The global expansion of hip-hop has also changed the dynamics. International companies like HIB are bringing different perspectives and different business models to the American market. This could lead to more competition and potentially better deals for artists. But it could also lead to new forms of exploitation as international companies try to replicate the financial success of labels like QC without understanding the cultural context that made that success possible. When you look at the whole picture, P's story is both impressive and disturbing. He built a major record label from nothing, launched the careers of some of hip-hop's biggest stars, and positioned himself as one of the most powerful executives in the music industry. But he did it by systematically exploiting the artists who trusted him. He used personal relationships to manipulate business decisions, structured contracts to benefit QC at the artist's expense, and betrayed loyalty when it was financially convenient. The billion-dollar finesse wasn't one big scam. It was a series of smaller manipulations that added up to massive wealth transfer from artists to executives. Every exploitative contract, every refused renegotiation, every forced buyout was part of a larger pattern of extracting value from the people who created it. The saddest part is that P could have been successful without being exploitative. QC's artists were talented enough to generate massive success under fair contracts. P's business skills were real. He just chose to use them in ways that prioritized his wealth over his artist welfare. The Young Thug calls were a wake-up call for the industry and for fans. They showed us how the business really works behind the scenes and how artists can be manipulated even when they think they're in partnerships. But they also showed us that artists are starting to understand the game better. Thug was trying to educate Baby about the reality of the industry, and other artists are sharing their own experiences with exploitative practices. The question now is whether the industry will change in response to this increased awareness, or whether executives like P will just find new ways to maintain their advantages. Based on history, real change will probably require continued pressure from artists, fans, and media. But one thing is clear. The days of artists blindly trusting label executives are over. The P and QC situation has shown everyone exactly what can happen when loyalty isn't reciprocated and when business relationships are built on manipulation rather than mutual respect. The billion-dollar finesse is over, but the lessons from it will shape how the music industry operates for years to come. And hopefully those lessons will lead to a more fair and transparent relationship between artists and the business infrastructure that supports them. That's the real story of how QCP finessed rappers out of $1 billion. It wasn't magic. It was manipulation, exploitation, and betrayal disguised as mentorship and family loyalty. And now that we all know how it works, it's up to us to make sure it doesn't happen again. The next time you see a label executive talking about family values and loyalty, remember P's story. Remember how he used those same words to justify taking hundreds of millions of dollars from the artists who trusted him. Because in the music industry, actions speak louder than words, and the numbers don't lie.